Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and wait just a minute for people to come in from the waiting room, and we will go ahead and get started with our Career Week event. Thank you all for joining us. We see the number of participants climbing, so we're going to wait just a few more seconds before we go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining. Well, good afternoon and welcome to Career Week. My name is Jessica Wilkie and I'm the Assistant Director of Special Events for the College of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences. We are excited that you're able to join us for today's webinar, Silicon Success, Careers in Science and Tech. This webinar is brought to you by CMNS in partnership with the Alumni Association's inaugural Career Week, a week-long virtual series to help alumni like you conquer, steer, and advance your career. We have a lot of information to cover today, but we will take questions at the end of the webinar. Feel free to submit any questions using the chat box located at the bottom of the Zoom panel. This webinar will be recorded. By participating, you acknowledge and consent to your image, likeness, or voice being recorded. Today's panel features 3 outstanding CMNS alumni and will be facilitated by Rachel Wolbrack. Rachel, take it away.
Thanks, Jess. As she said, I'm Rachel Wolbrack. I work in the University Career Center. I'm a program director. I work specifically with the College of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences. For some of the older alum, I mean not, super old even. I don't think I'm super old, but you might remember CMNS by a different name. When I was a student, CMNS was 2 colleges, our College of Computer, Mathematical, and Physical Sciences, and Chemical and Life Sciences. I see some of our panelists nodding their heads. So if CMNS comes out, that's what we mean. Know that it's, the college that you belong to as well. I also want to welcome, I know we probably have some students that are here too, because I shared this out and thought that some of our students could take advantage of this. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to start, rather than introducing our great panelists, I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And I'm going to let Adam start. But if you would, briefly introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and the nature of your organization and job.
So I'm Adam Blum. I'm CEO of Augur.ai, which is an automated machine learning platform. And what I do is really, like any startup CEO, drive the product definition.
Great. Jen, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jenn Rozepa, and I graduated with a degree in mathematics in 2000. I've been in the Bay Area about 15 years, and I've worked at Apple, Tesla, at Uber in supply chain operations. I lead teams in forecasting, planning, production, and distribution, and across both finished goods and service operations.
All right, I'll go, Rachel. I'm Shravan Goli. I was a graduate from Maryland Computer Science Graduate School in 1994. So it's been a while, but it was CMPS back then, Rachel. I just had a phenomenal time there, and I kind of look back over the years. It's been just that experience has set me up for whatever some of the things that I've been successful at today, I would say. Where am I at? I am at Coursera. We are a platform that connects a global ecosystem of learners, educators, and employers. And I'm the Chief Product Officer and also manage the consumer business. So that's my role. And long career at Microsoft, Yahoo, and other places as President, CEO, and product and marketing roles.
Wonderful. Thank you. And just a reminder, as we go through questions, I have a number of them, but if those watching today have questions, please feel free to stick them in the chat or the Q&A. Jess will kind of keep an eye on them. So I will go through some questions, but we'll also open it up to you as well if you have big questions. As you do that, let us know if you're an alum and maybe when you graduated, so we have an idea if you're maybe early in your career or later, or even if you're still a student, that'll give us an idea, by graduation year of maybe where you are in your career. Our next question, let's see, how do you feel UMD prepared you for your career? What do you think makes Turks desirable employees in your field? And Shravan, I'm going to start with you because you kind of hinted that a little bit when you introduced yourself.
Yeah, sure. So fundamental, first of all, welcome the audience and attendance. I would love to hear more questions and thoughts from you all as well. So growing up in India, I did my bachelor's in computer science in India. And after a 4-year degree, I come to Maryland. What I've realized is I wasn't really good at programming in the first place. I went through the whole bachelor's program. And so for me, I think Maryland really introduced me to practical applications of computer science. And in particular, the work that we were doing at the Institute for Systems Research, where we were bringing a lot of industry collaboration into the campus to solve some real practical problems for the world. So I think the kinds of projects I worked on, whether it was human-computer interaction-based new interface designs and new interfaces for solving networking problems, et cetera, they were all applicable as I went into my career in terms of I started as a network software developer at Hughes Network Systems. I was working on their project on campus, and then they hired me, and I subsequently went to Microsoft as software engineer. But there was also another aspect to this, which was really about collaboration and teamwork and projects that you do together. That's also essential for success in a workplace environment. So as you think about some of the soft skills in terms of communication, writing, and language, et cetera, they're all become important. And those are also some of the things that, coming from India, for me, I think adjusting to what and how you operate in the world of US business was also something that I actually learned because we were engaged with industry partners. And then, a lot of other things, but I'll hand it over to the next person.
I'll chime in here. So I got a degree in math, like I said earlier, and some of those classes were not easy. I definitely struggled in a few of them. I was not a straight A student, and I succeeded. In the end, I did well, graduated, and went on to use those skills. So the reason why I bring it up is because, you may have had a hard time at times in some of your classes that you took, but I'll tell you, Maryland teaches you grit and determination. And there's a reason why they're hard, right? So they're hard to really teach you things. And if you persevere, you'll learn those qualities like staying with something and really working hard for it. It really helps you take things, I guess, as they come and, not be entitled about things. So definitely appreciated it.
Yeah, so I would echo the comments that I've heard about the rigor that we really have there. I have hired hundreds, if not thousands, certainly well over 1,000 engineers, developers, whether it's after the college or during college. Microsoft used to send me around the world doing a lot of their interviewing for them. And I actually was very initially interested in, what people studied. I actually found over time that it was better to give programming problems and not sort of try to figure out all the classes they took. But initially it was a lot of questions about what kinds of classes, and I just felt nothing. I mean, I interviewed people from all over the place. I've never found anything, I'm not exaggerating, that approaches the rigor that I experienced in Maryland. CMSC 412, writing an operating system from scratch in assembly. I think most of these course names are actually still the same, so it may not seem so unfamiliar. I remember taking CMSC 110P with over 1,000 students in the class with Professor Harlan Mills. I also remember graduating with 35 people, one of whom is still a close friend. So he keeps me honest that those numbers are correct. So the rigor is the big one. I also think that the diversity matters a lot. You know, meeting people from all over the world. Maryland's always been a leader in that, from all walks of life. It's so big. There's, you know, every kind of culture represented, every kind of niche. I have 5 children, and I've basically said, you will only go to a big state school. That's it. Because for that reason, even though some of them are, you know, could get into an Ivy League college, I really want to see the big state school. I also have been an adjunct at UC Berkeley, which is a wonderful school. I love it. But I can tell you, and this was in the grad school, so it may not be, you know, a scientific sample, but the diversity of my students did not really approach the diversity that I experienced at Maryland.
Thank you. I know a couple of you have mentioned different degrees. Are there other certifications or degrees maybe that you haven't mentioned that you've acquired that you feel have been helpful in your field?
Yeah, I can start. So after I worked at Hughes briefly, then I ended up at Microsoft in '95 as well, and spent about 11 years at Microsoft. But it was a very career-changing move for me. Fundamentally, I went from being a techie software developer to a product manager to a marketing manager to kind of sales enablement. So kind of went the whole 9 yards. And the reason why I undertook that journey was to kind of say, it's like, hey, I want to start a company of my own one day in my life. So I want to understand the 360 of the business. So in order to do that, I actually went and got my MBA at UW while I was at Microsoft as an executive MBA. And that helped me a lot to kind of pair your strong technical underpinning with understanding of how the business side works. Like, it's a lot of it is about your customers, your markets, your competition, your business models, and understanding how do you create value for the customers, how do you create value for the business, et cetera, et cetera. I think you'll learn, obviously, MBA was phenomenally helpful, but changing the role at the same time actually helped me to contextualize a lot of that learning as well. So I would say the strong tech foundation and with the business was a real key success, part of my journey as well.
So yeah, what I would say was really helpful towards the end of my undergrad at Maryland, I started sort of majoring in Dr. Canal. He's a now, I believe he has passed, professor, but was a longtime professor, one of the early luminaries of AI, absolutely. It's interesting because I ended up writing a book out of that work. It's actually right above my head. It's called Neural Networks in C++, one of the first applied neural network books. And he's such a luminary that even though they didn't know, like that I was going to Maryland or whatever when I submitted it, and he ended up being the reviewer. And then of course he made all kinds of sarcastic remarks about my writing style and my programming things based upon his time working with me. And so from working with him, I actually initially was accepted into Maryland for grad school, but because I was working in Virginia, I finished at George Mason. So here's my caveat about the master's degree in computer science. And because I've seen a lot of people come out with it, is if you're going to pursue that, make sure, because you've already done this very rigorous, you've already done a Maryland undergrad, you're very hireable, okay? You're very hireable with that. So if you're going to get a master's degree, make sure that you're going to spend the time developing what you want to do. So I knew I wanted to do neural networks. This was before the sort of first neural network winner. And what I did is I basically spent most of my time during neural network classes, writing my thesis, which turned into my book. So my only sort of tidbit there is, yes, a master's degree in computer science can be very helpful. But I would especially say, with as rigorous as your undergraduate is, make sure you have a very specific goal in mind of some topic or something to develop if you choose to go on to one.
So let me see. I think for me, my experience was a little bit different from the other two panelists. I got a bachelor's and then I didn't get an advanced degree. What I did actually is I participated in a few Coursera classes, and I highly recommend those classes. I've taken leadership classes and management classes. And then I took, I think there was an MIT class or classes on executive education. And those are really helpful. So another path that you may want to go down is get that amazing degree from Maryland and then kind of sample along the way. And if you happen to find something you really enjoy, go ahead, like Adam said, and really dive in and commit yourself to learning everything you can about that topic.
Great. Switching gears just a little bit. When and why did you make the decision to move to the West Coast? And then how have you networked with other Turks in your area? For those that might be thinking about, doing just that. And I guess, Jen, would you mind starting?
Sure. So mine was not, a strategic choice. We were in our 20s, my husband and I, then boyfriend, and we just said, hey, it'd be fun to go out to the Bay Area. It's really pretty. Let's go on a new adventure. We knew no one out here. I knew not a soul except for my husband. And we made the jump, and I've been out here over 15 years. It's been very exciting, but I'll tell you, there was a bit of an adjustment, with the culture. So the culture out here is very laid back. Socially, it's pretty different. We found it to be more relaxed. But once you kind of ease into it and relax into it as well, it becomes really fun.
I can talk about my experience. I think I started working in the East Coast, but when Microsoft offered me the job, it was almost like a no-brainer. If you were in the mid-90s, if you envision the #1 company you wanted to be at was Microsoft. So it was almost a no-brainer for me to go to Seattle at that time. With that said, after 5 or 6 years, I was just like really done with the weather. It would rain 9 months in a year. And so you kind of lose your sort of outdoor activities and et cetera, the fun of it goes away. So the second thing, as I mentioned, like I wanted to start something on my own. And I felt like, okay, Silicon Valley would be a great place to go and meet other like-minded people who would be looking to kind of build and create their own adventures. And so that's kind of what brought me down to Silicon Valley. Turns out I did try an attempt at starting a company. It was just the bad timing. And so kind of had to bolt out of it and find a job, which I did. But I also shifted from like sort of these big companies into smaller companies. And I think that's the other opportunity Silicon Valley had created back in the day to be able to find a lot of different types of companies. With that said, I think about like, what's happening in the world today and kind of where we're seeing sort of the future of the work has headed. Clearly, I think pandemic changed the nature of the work and embracing remote work has become sort of a top thing for every company, right? And especially in terms of technology type jobs and et cetera, you can perform these jobs sitting from anywhere in the world in general. And so I think companies are starting to shift a model, including us, like at Coursera, we're shifting to the model of, hey, let's hire the best talent, no matter where they are. To Adam's point, first of all, I think it obviously gives you access to talent. And so you're not like just focused in one area. Second is diversity. I think it just really gives us an opportunity to hire all kinds of different types of representation in our company. And it's time and again, it's been proven diversity makes our products better and our world better anyway. So I do think for this generation of graduates coming out of college today, I don't know it's as important to say, I want to go to West Coast or I want to go to East Coast, like, wherever it is. I think it's, you actually have the ability and the opportunity to pick and choose what you like to do and pursue that passion pretty hard. And I think, so that's what I would recommend thinking about. At least this is what personally I'm thinking when I'm looking for people. We're just completely dropped the idea of they have to be on the West Coast.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So for myself, apparently I've made a career of like following Shravan around because I went out to Microsoft in the mid 90s and then came down to Silicon Valley in 2000. So I didn't know I was following you around, but apparently I was. Yeah, my advice is, maybe the pandemic has changed things because I happen to manage a distributed workforce where I have half in Silicon Valley and half wherever they want to be in the world. And I've done my last few startups, all of which exited successfully, including one with your colleague, Paulina. And I've done with a mix of people in Silicon Valley and people elsewhere. So what I would say is, maybe if we talked 10 years ago, I'd say, well, you really need to come out here. I think you can develop your career wherever you wish. I think things are much more distributed now. I think there is something special about being in Silicon Valley, maybe for a brief period. But if you say like, look, long term, I need to stay in the DC area or whatever, I'm sure you can find the right things. And I would say that things have reached the point where you should pursue your career based on your interests, not based upon being in a certain place or working for a certain company. You may know there are companies that try to say, well, we're not going to tell you what you're going to do. You go apply and we'll decide what we have you do. And I know many people working for that big company and none of them are happy, although they're all well paid. And I would just encourage you to follow your own passions of what you want to build in life. And I think you can probably do it wherever you want.
Great.
Adam, just to close it out, we were both at Microsoft in the SQL Server team at the same time. This is insanity. It's just
There
like
weren't that many people. There weren't even that many people on the team back then.
That's right.
Just a few hundred.
That's right. Building 25.
Oh, I was in building 4.
Yes, afterwards, yes.
I was on Lake Bill.
Yes.
Sounds like you just missed each other a couple of times. I'm glad the panel could bring you together.
Absolutely.
This is another one based on some of the things that you've just been talking about. How do you feel the field has been affected by COVID? What advice, maybe beyond what you've already just said, would you have for people seeking employment in this field? So not just that they can work from wherever, but for some businesses that maybe aren't hiring as much or as often as they usually do. How have you seen it affect the field, and what advice would you have?
Well, it certainly hasn't depressed tech in any way. I mean, it's not slowing down deals. It's not slowing down startups. It's not slowing down profitability. It's not slowing down hiring. So if you, especially for those of you that are computer science graduates, you're just you're in a really good place right now, and you're in a really good place to pursue what you want to do and work where you want to work. I don't think it certainly had a lot of, I would say the one maybe downside is that there is a lot of value to early in your career working for a more established company. Just learn best practices, learn the nomenclature for things, and working around other people, that want to mentor you. And it is a little bit different doing that remote. It just is. So that's the one, there's a lot of positives, but I would say the ability to not work in person, I mean, hopefully this is going away soon, but the not being able to work in person as you're sort of learning the trade with more experienced employees is probably, that's going to be painful short term, but should be cleared up in a year or so.
Yeah. Plus one, Adam, on that. I think also when you think about it, the workforce is going to evolve into a hybrid workforce environments anyway. So part-time you will be on whatever premise, and then part-time will be remote. And I think as you think about building a career, at this point, you may start as a software developer. I've done it like four different versions of career changes. And a lot of that was possible because you're engaging and interacting with a lot of people, understanding and observing like, hey, what do each of these roles do and mean, et cetera. And then you just kind of get interested in those, and then you want to pursue, then you also have to get mentored by those people. It's not that easy, transitions wise. Now, if I step back for a second, I just as I think about like what some of the trends that are occurring right now and kind of how pandemic has accelerated some of these trends. I think I refer back to this World Economic Forum report from jobs report from 2020. This is something we spend a lot of time looking at, just given Coursera. But the workforce is automating faster than expected. And what that means is by 2025, there will be a shift in the division of labor between humans and machines. There will be a whole bunch of jobs that machines will do efficiently and effectively at very low cost. And pandemic has demonstrated that need and accelerate that need faster. And then there'll be a whole bunch of jobs that humans will do. But the skills that are required by these humans are evolving quite fast. And so the humans have to reskill. And so we talk about like this future of the work and the future of learning are converging, which means that most of the employers are finding themselves that almost 50% of their employees need reskilling. And so one of the key elements of learning is in old days, like I guess even when I did this, it was a linear path. Like you go through high school and then college and then maybe master's, et cetera. And then you go for a job and you don't actually have to go back to college. And we kind of had to adapt. But I think the pace of technology change that's been happening and that's happening now means that you have to constantly reinvent yourself. So I think one way to think about this is you can pick a career, you can pick a domain, but be ready to learn, change, grow all the time. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, I think, when we look at some of the skills gaps as a result, what are going to be in-demand skills across the jobs in the next 5 years? The things that generally come to top of the mind are definitely sort of there's the two classes here, which is sort of the emerging skills, which is cloud, AI, machine learning, data science, et cetera. So if you are in CS, it's just like, general physician versus a heart surgeon kind of thing. You want to think about, okay, I'm a general computer scientist versus I'm an AI or a machine learning scientist or a data scientist or a cloud engineer or security. I think if you can map your sort of the passions or figuring out where they lie, but for that, you don't have to do all of that in college. Like you have a lot of online training sources. And so go find those online training sources, identify the path because those are some of the hot emerging areas, right? And then the second piece is don't forget the soft skills. I think one of the challenges of this generation, the device generation, is you spend more time in the devices than with people. And so I think the idea around what World Economic Forum continues to say is sort of this analytical thinking, creativity, flexibility in your mind, and communication skills continue to become important. And so think of this blend that you want to be. That's how you're going to differentiate yourself.
So given my role as sort of following Shravan around, I just want to drill in on 2 points that he made. One is this point about needing to just be more than a pure computer science guy and including data science and machine learning in it. So if you go to the Augur website, you'll see we have this phrase, AI is eating software. And this is actually already happening. What it is if you actually look at most applications, the complexity is what people call business rules. So that's things like, how do you sort the, I don't know, you're in a CRM, how are you sorting, what you're showing to the salespeople? It's, nested conditionals for things. Those are approximations of what really work in the real world, and they have value. But those are already beginning to be replaced by predictive models all over the place. So if you're just the guy like writing the back end code and you're not saying, where should I be using predictive models? You're really dating yourself, and you're gonna limit what you can do in terms of like thinking about the whole solution. So predictive models are taking over everywhere. So if you're a computer scientist, you really owe it to yourself to get a certain amount of machine learning and data science expertise. Not to say that you would just do that, but you need to add that to your mix. The other thing I'll say is part of the reason for being why it's great to be a high quality, big public university like Maryland is you can work on these other skills that if you want to be somebody who's making a difference in the world, whether it's to start an engineering, go to product like Shravan does, or whether it's starting companies like I've done, you're going to need more than those technical skills. Maryland, of course, has always had a great English department. I took a lot of English, including upper level English. I took a lot of econ, and you're really well positioned to take advantage of that. I think I did even check, then there's all this requirement for upper level classes and other disciplines. So you're really in a great spot to be able to get those additional skills, both rounding out your computer science education and getting other skills that you'll need in the business world from other departments.
So COVID really impacted supply chain operations. As you guys know, supply chain is really a series of functions performed in sequence. Now, at first at Uber, the supply chain staff in Asia was offline, right? Because they were impacted first. So material wasn't moving out. And then as we saw things progress and spread around the world, all of our global cities started coming down, like going offline and coming back online and offline. And so it really challenged the team at Uber that I led in distribution to be very flexible with our processes. Another kind of anecdote is I had a team in New York City, and they were really impacted by that first wave. And so it was kind of hard to see them lose their loved ones. There is an element of leading through a lot of upset, a lot of change, a lot of challenge. Some advice I have for people seeking employment during this crazy time. Generally, I would say, networking is best, right? Get to know some people who may attend or promote this event. And then while you're networking, I would say, make sure that you have your information down, that you know what you've done and you can speak to it, what you want to do and why, and then the company and the role that you're interested in, be able to really talk about it and tell a compelling story if you can about the role of the company, and really kind of motivate someone that you're networking with to be like, wow, I really connect with you. That means a lot. I'm here for you. How can I help?
Thank you. I do still have some questions, but I saw two questions that came through, excuse me, recently that were very similar around career transitions. So one person specifically asked if you could talk about career transitions, particularly like with smaller tech companies. They said it seems much harder to find a great match when it comes to moving to smaller company, particularly at the senior levels. The other person asked if you have any advice for someone considering a career shift, maybe shifting from practicing clinical medicine as a physician to maybe getting more into tech or something else. So if you have anything around career transitions or shifting with smaller companies, or maybe even from something a little outside of tech to a more tech-based.
I think this is an area where it's really helpful to be at a larger company. Larger companies generally see the value in coming from one part of the business and moving to the other part of the business, and then retaining people because they want to make those changes. So if you really want sort of help and support in it, it is harder to do this at a smaller company. Say, I don't know, you're an engineer and you want to move to a product manager. It's very situational whether you can really do that. At a larger company, if that's what you want to do, there is usually the support for doing supporting classes, giving you, there's a big trend in companies of what's called gigs, of the idea of taking these short-term gigs where you develop some other skills by doing some other work on a either part-time or short-term basis. So that's an area where I would really bias towards if you are considering making that shift. I think there's a case for going to a larger company as we discussed at the beginning of your career anyway, but as you move into your career and you start saying, look, I need to transition, that's where being at a larger company and especially one with a good reputation for internal company education and supporting that can really help.
Totally agree, Adam. I think my time at Microsoft was really crucial for that. And Microsoft was a great environment that allowed people to explore different career trajectories. And there was a lot of internal training, but also the ability, we had an internal job board, so you could actually see the jobs internally. You could go talk to those hiring managers and qualify yourself or disqualify yourself, like both ways. You just can understand what is missing from a certain career. But then also being able to talk to people who actually do those jobs actively, right? And so when you're in a bigger environment, you have the ability to do that. And then people you work for move on to do other things. And so your network continues to grow and you're able to kind of go actually seek out those opportunities. I also think, just related to this question around clinical medicine as a physician to something in tech, I think one way to think about this is every industry is being transformed because of technology. You take healthcare to financials to any sector, you think about it. So I think one of the ways that you could say, like, okay, there's like 6 degrees of separation to 1 degree of separation in terms of the transitions that you can imagine. So if you were like, all right, my core strength is in healthcare and health technology, healthcare related problems and opportunities, et cetera. And you have to obviously look at like your own like modality of like you're more analytical versus you're more sort of marketing versus you're a little bit more sort of salesy. Like you have to think through those pieces. But I think you can shift to technology because everything is now being driven by technology. So there's an element of bring what you have, your strength, and then you can learn in the new environment also.
Yeah, I would also say that, if you take a step back from your skills, if you could list down all of your skills and then maybe take a step back and think about those core skills and how they're transferable to the new framework of where you want to go in the future. And that way you can kind of say, hey, these are my skills, and I'm going to shift them just a little bit to kind of fit into the new framework. I think if you're good at speaking at a high level to what your experience is and how that directly applies to the roles that you want to go out for within a particular industry or what the core values are, I would say in the end, do a comparison. It really doesn't hurt. Also, I think what's valuable is doing a lot of research. Right? So what is the new industry value? What do those particular companies value in terms of culture, work ethic, whatever it may be, and then really think about how can you translate your skills into that new framework so it makes sense for the people who would be interviewing you.
Someone asked a question, this isn't necessarily to the panelists, but someone asked a question about would there be an opportunity for attendees to network or share information? If there are those that are interested in doing that, I would highly recommend, I'm sure most of you are probably on LinkedIn, but there is a College of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences group. Joining that and introducing yourself there, letting people know that you're interested in networking, I think would be a great start. The Alumni Association also has a program called Terrapins Connect. So it's kind of like LinkedIn, but just for Maryland alumni. And the idea too is that in addition to connecting with alumni, you connect with students. So if you have an interest in maybe even mentoring or helping a student with a resume or something like that, you can kind of say what you're interested in doing. And again, that's Terrapins Connect. You can find that on the Alumni Association's website, or even just Googling it, you'll find it very easily. But those could be some options to potentially network and connect with people that are on this. And I wanted to share that. But next question, someone asked, what type of things do you look for if you're looking to hire someone who in data science? If any of you have experience with that or have some experience to add to
that. So what I was saying, I made an attempt to answer this question. One of the things I want to see is more like real models. Like you're in a university, people are doing research. You can connect with people that are doing real research and maybe be their data scientist. Less Kaggle contests. Those problems have been chewed on by 100 other people. I have no way of knowing if you've really added IP in the process or whether you're just forking what somebody else did. Another thing I look for is really understanding, paying attention to the full model life cycle. It's a lot more than just picking the best algorithm. It's understanding how to manipulate the data, which can be a little mundane, but it's still a very important thing. How do you get it from this sort of unstructured mass to something you can use with machine learning, all the way through making sure that machine learning model, it remains accurate, which is actually one of the biggest challenges in a real model. People are just starting to wake up the problems of model drift. And then the final thing is connecting accuracy of models to business results. It turns out you can build a model that's 90% accurate, but still loses money. You can build a model that's 51% accurate that makes money. So that's another sort of frontier. If you're building things to solve real problems, you sort of have to solve that. If you're trying to win Kaggle contests, you don't even need to worry about that. So those are the things that I look for in a data scientist, even a budding data scientist that might be an undergrad or a recent grad.
Yeah, when I hire data scientists, like at Apple and other companies where I've managed statisticians and data scientists, I would say I look for people who can, of course, do the technical work, but also who have a really open personality, who are willing to learn and who are willing to get their hands dirty. Because kind of to Adam's point, like if I could expand on that, I would say, you know, a lot of data science is actually not as fun. Like the data, some of the data refinement, some other stuff, like it may not be as exciting as some of the other work. So I think going into it with an open mind, willing to get your hands dirty and put in the time it takes to really maintain the current algorithms while building and creating some more, I think would be good. But just having that perspective of, hey, some of it is going to be really cool and I'm going to be really excited about it. And some of it is just going to be a lot of hard work. I just got to dig in and, you know, go through it.
Yeah, we have a large team of data scientists too. I think one of the things, at least as I look for, is it's great to have all these models, but if you can't explain what they do and what the benefit of that is, it becomes very hard for non-data scientists to follow and actually, you know, kind of buy into the pitch. So I think being able to kind of break it down into what problem you're trying to solve and what the benefit of this particular solution is also equally important in my view.
I would agree. I would say, you know, I think it's important to be able to, of course, deliver on the technical front, but also don't hide behind that. To Shravan's point, you got to be able to speak to your work, why you did something the way you did it, why you picked this one and not this one, how you refine the data, you know, just the level of granularity and everything you may go into when deriving a forecast in some cases is extremely important, because in the end, when you're forecasting billions of dollars in material, like we were at Apple or doing some other stuff, the company is always going to want to know why they should invest their billions of dollars in what you're telling them to do. So the level of rigor, the level of granularity, you know, the data you're using, be ready to openly share and explain what you're doing in a really positive way.
Thank you. As remote work becomes more popular and the candidate pool gets larger, what's the best way to distinguish yourself from other candidates, potentially from around the world?
So I have a little counterpoint to this. I think the remote work creates more equity in the workforce because I think it allows us as employers to look for people no matter where they are. But it's also looking for the best talent though. Like the reason why we would want to go look, it's not just purely cost perspective, right? It's more diversity as well as the best talent wherever they are. So I think at the end of the day, the core skills that we look for in a particular job, whether it's software engineer, product manager, et cetera, they don't necessarily change no matter where this person is. And so you would want to continue to be good at sort of that core skill. I think where the amplification comes from a remote perspective is, I think it would probably have to be a lot more like, you know, a little bit more and self-driven and be able to also operate in a little bit of an independent environment from time to time, because you're remote, you're sort of on an island at times. That's one part of it. The other part of it is to be able to leverage the communication channels and resources pretty effectively. So whether it is Slack, or whether it is Zoom, whether it is other mechanisms, the internal mechanisms that the company is engaging in, you need to be able to participate. So a lot of times what I see in our sort of the Zoom calls, 80% of the video is shut. So first of all, you're leaving yourself to be sort of included in the whole dialogue easily when I don't see the people in the first place, because I can't monitor your reaction. I don't know if there's a question on your mind, but when I'm in the meeting, I'm observing and I can actually tell, like, maybe somebody wants to speak up. And so people don't do it, but I've seen what people do is effectively what's going on here, like using the chats, even the Q&A, much more effectively. So use that alternate mechanism. The other thing I've been doing with my team is either using Jamboards or Miro sort of as a collaboration tool to kind of bring people together and doing the breakouts. That's where at least you have the ability to engage smaller groups of people. So the point is, anyway, ultimately, can you collaborate? Can you engage? Can you work with other people becomes important from a cultural standpoint. And if you can prove yourself that you're good at collaboration, you can communicate and engage teams, engage people over video means, if you would, that would be an advantage.
I would say it's kind of interesting, leading teams over Zoom, because you're not meeting casually in the break room or on your way to the bathroom or something like that. So you need to be more intentional with how you connect with people. I would say that's kind of been a newer thing for me with a remote, with a remote focus. One thing I wanted to add earlier that I didn't add is I may be able to relate to some people who are looking for a job, because for me, COVID hit home. So I was at Uber at the time, running distribution for Jump, the bikes and scooters. And Uber laid off thousands of people last year, closed a bunch of offices. And so, they also sold my business unit Jump. And at that time, I think it was mid to 2020, I was able to focus on my family, kind of pivot for a little bit. I became a much better cook, something I really never focused on prior to that. I also put on a few pounds because I got pretty good at it, and then I lost it all on the keto diet. And it's been a great time, honestly, to get to know my kids a bit more and my husband. So it's been really good. But going back to, how you would interview and how you would do all of this, I would say do your best, give it your all, apply to those companies, do what you can to network and everything. But if it's just not your time right now, if you need a few more weeks, that's totally cool too. Sit back and kind of really try to appreciate what it's like to be at home and really dig in. If you got family around or friends around, maybe try to connect with them too.
Great. So I know this next question is one that, Siobhan, you marked as wanting to answer. So I'm going to let you start. Someone said they're looking for a project manager role in the fintech space. What would you suggest? Like, should they create a portfolio? And if so, of what? What maybe suggestions do you have?
Yeah, it was accidental. I was going to type the answer and hit answer live. So anyway.
That's okay. That's good. Everybody can benefit.
This is a little hard question to answer without understanding who the person is and kind of what the background of the context is. But putting that aside, if I think about the product manager as a role, the product managers are the ones that are really thinking about customer. My view is, like, always, like when I talk to my team, it's like, who's the customer? Whose problem are you trying to solve? And why? So start with the why. So who is the customer? What are the pain points? And so to me, I think, are you solving a pain point that the customer is really, really worried about? Or is it just like, I always thought it was like vitamin versus painkiller. Like, we get caught up in like, oh, I can build this X, Y, and Z for people, right? Well, people care. And will they care enough to use your product? And will they care enough to pay for your product? Which is like, If you build it, will they come? If they come, will they pay? If they pay, then the question becomes like, are there going to be a lot of people that will pay for this product? Because you also don't want to build something just for a small segment of population. So product manager's job is to kind of really think about these kinds of customer problems, understand like, what solution can solve those problems, and then ultimately think about like, what is the business model you need to wrap around it to create enough value from a competitive as well as sustainable business growth standpoint. So in terms of a portfolio, for example, I never had like a portfolio when I switched from a software engineer job to a product manager job. But I did a lot of sort of through the MBA, I was able to create a lot of these projects that were talking about customers and business models, et cetera, et cetera. So I became a lot more intelligent about it. It took a lot of head bumps for me to kind of get to the point where I was considered a reasonably good product manager in the first place. But today, I would also say you have lots of like education that you can do online, and you can do simulations, et cetera. So that should also prepare you better for the role itself. I think, yeah, I can give more specific targeted advice based on who the, what the context is.
Okay, so with just about 10 minutes left, I think I have 2 questions, unless we see some other ones come in through the chat. What is the biggest risk you have taken in your career? And then who wants to be brave enough to answer it first?
That's a tough one, because I think there were a number of risky propositions that I ended up with over the years. Certainly, just kind of trying to. So this transition from software engineer to product manager was interesting. As I went and did the MBA, it gave me confidence to actually do the job and do the job. A number of my friends followed me the next to do the MBA at UW. They were software engineers, and a lot of times they were questioning like, oh, do I really need to get an MBA if I want to become a manager? Well, my answer was like, no. If you want to be a manager, you can learn on the job. So really know why you want an MBA. But they went ahead and did it. At the end of it, some of them switched to the product management, but within 6 months, they flipped back to being a software engineer. So I think it's hard to know who it'll align or not. And every time I did that, my ratings and reviews were pretty bad. So you have to be able to sustain that whenever you do that. So those were risky moves. And then the other one was trying to timing of trying to start a company at the end of 2008 when the financial markets collapsed. A few months later, where I told my boss, I got this company thing going on, and I'm going to go switch, and I'm quitting. And then the term sheets went away, and all of a sudden, I don't have a job, and a recession looming, and I'm like, oh shit, moment, pretty much what do I do? But I think that life has a way of teaching you things, and you're going to figure out if you have that the core skill of working through tough situations, and you'll find your way. I think that's kind of what happened. Of course, luck, God's grace, a number of other things align too.
I completely agree with you. I think in any career, if you've been in the Valley long enough, you go through those ups and downs, right? I think for me, I definitely, if you look at my resume, I'm attracted to high risk companies, and I would say that for me, I don't really view it necessarily as risk. I think it's more exciting. If it's working at Tesla for Elon, who is definitely an interesting person, a genius, but also has his ups and downs. Or making the switch. I made the switch from being an engineer out of college. I was a teacher, and then I was an engineer. Becoming, going from a teacher to an engineer, and then I got into supply chain operations, and I've been in that ever since. I would say that, what advice do I have? I would say, You probably want to do a lot of research, hustle, and learn as fast as you can, and you want to remain humble. So as you step into a new role, whether that is a totally new area, totally new industry, or even a new role or a promotion within a company where you're gaining more responsibility, you always want to make sure that you're humble and that you don't overstate what you know, because that doesn't go well. I've seen people do that and it's not always good. So be super honest and humble, but also eager and positive. If you can do all of that, I think it'd be really good.
So in keeping with my parallel life with Shravan, the riskiest thing I ever did is I had always been just a VP of engineering, CTO for quite a long time. And then right when smartphones were coming out, I decided that what the world needed was an open source framework to write native apps for smartphones. So I wanted to start a company that did that. I actually wanted to find a CEO, could not find a CEO who would like give reasonable terms. So the riskiest thing I ever did was go be a first-time CEO right in the middle of the recession in 2008 with no term sheet. And the whole movie turned out well. We sold to Motorola in 2011, but it was very risky. You know, I was missing many skills. It was so much personal growth. It was painful. It was more personal growth than I would wish on anybody in a short period of time. But that was definitely the riskiest thing. But it's definitely paid off, and made me a more well-rounded person. Being a CEO is very different from being a CTO or VP of engineering.
Great, thank you. We've covered most of the questions that came through. I apologize to a couple of people that we might have not gotten to. I know some of you were answering by texting responses back, so that's great, thank you. But before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts, advice, things that you would like to say to the alumni and potentially some students that are watching this and have heard all that you've had to say so far?
Lots of good questions. It was really fun to see that so many people that want to be a data scientist. So encourage you all to pursue that. That's what just my reaction is. I saw a lot of those kinds of questions, so it was great to see. Sorry, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, no, that's okay. I think one thing I'll add in is, as you go throughout your career and as you work with some really amazing people, I would say it's really important to fall back and remember that the skills you've learned at Maryland, the grit, determination, the hardcore technical skills, they're really going to carry you. And so do not be intimidated by people who you think are more credentialed or just more experienced or have worked at these flashy companies, because we've worked at those flashy companies and we know, right? There are some really amazing people, and there are some people who, you may fit right in, right? You probably will if they hired you.
Yeah.
So I would say that definitely hang in there, do a great job, don't be intimidated, realize that Maryland has set you up for success. The emphasis on diversity, I think, is super positive and amazing and awesome right now. And I would say if you're a female in supply chain like me, or if you're an Asian female in supply chain like me, now's your time, right? And go out there and be awesome.
Yeah, totally. I think that the women in tech and the underrepresented groups is something I think we're all focused on in encouraging and participating and kind of hiring side. Certainly, I think if you are in one of those categories, just continue to kind of improve your skills. There are lots of opportunities out there. I think for me, I think fundamentally, Maryland provides a great platform. And as you get out of Maryland, or if you're already in workforce today, I think the key skill as I think about going forward is your ability to keep yourself learning. So if you can have sort of that learning mindset, I think you will figure out the paths forward. And to Jennifer's point, I think we've all been successful in companies where there were like, lots, relatively speaking, a lot smarter people on paper, but I think it's our ability to kind of find our path and keep learning and reaching out to people and kind of connecting with those folks who are willing to help and then kind of get to that next outcome for yourself. So good luck. This has been a pleasure, and I appreciate everybody who kind of jumped on this call.
Well, with that, on behalf of myself, Jess, CMNS, as well as the Alumni Association, and everyone that's here, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing all that you have, your advice, insights. It's really been very interesting and so helpful. And thank you to those that decided to sign on and join us and hear what our panelists have to say. We were so glad that you joined us. Hope that you have a great evening. And remember that there are more things happening with the Alumni Association's Career Week. So if there are other events later in the week that you're interested in, please sign in with those too. But thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Most people have left, but I just want to say thank you again to all of our panelists. We really appreciate your time, being flexible with time zones and sharing all of your expertise. So thank you for joining us. We will go ahead and send this recording out. So if there's anybody you would like to share it with, that's great. And we will follow up with you all. But thank you so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
It's true.
Thank you.